Budget overruns and resource mismanagement are two of the most common reasons projects fail, and two of the most heavily tested topics on the PMP exam. Task 5 of Domain 2 covers both together, because in practice they are inseparable. You cannot manage a budget without managing the resources that consume it. In this video, I'll break down Task 5 completely, the 5 enablers, the key budget concepts the exam tests, how resources are planned and managed in both predictive and agile environments, and a practice question. Let's get into it. Task 5 sits in Domain 2, Process, 50% of the exam. The task statement is, plan and manage budget and resources. There are 5 enablers. First, estimate budgetary needs based on the scope of the project and lessons learned from past projects. Second, anticipate future budget challenges. Third, monitor budget variations and work with governance process to adjust as necessary. Fourth, plan and manage resources. Fifth, manage and coordinate internal and external resources. 5 enablers covering the full life cycle from estimation through execution and monitoring. Before the enablers, a distinction that matters on every budget question. Cost is what you spend. Budget is what you are authorized to spend. The difference between them is variance, and managing that variance is the project manager's financial responsibility. The budget is not set by the project manager. It is approved by the sponsor and governance authority. The PM plans within the approved budget, monitors spending against it, and escalates when variances threaten to exceed authorized limits. On the exam, any option that suggests the PM changes the budget unilaterally is wrong. Budget changes go through the change control process, always. The first enabler is estimate budgetary needs based on scope and lessons learned. Budget estimation begins with a clear understanding of scope. What work must be done, and what resources does that work require? The exam tests 4 estimation techniques. Analogous estimating, using historical data from similar past projects. Fast but less accurate. Expert judgment, leveraging the knowledge of experienced team members or subject matter experts. Bottom-up estimating, estimating each work package individually and rolling up to the total. Most accurate but most time-consuming. Parametric estimating, using statistical relationships between variables, such as cost per unit of output. Lessons learned is explicitly mentioned in this enabler because past project data is one of the most reliable inputs to future estimates. On the exam, using historical data is almost always part of the correct answer for estimation questions. The second enabler is anticipate future budget challenges. The PMI project manager does not wait for budget problems to appear. They identify warning signs early and act before variances become unmanageable. Budget challenges typically come from 3 sources: scope changes that were not properly costed, either approved changes that increased the budget without corresponding funding, or scope creep that consumed budget without authorization. Resource changes, team turnover, rate increases, or unexpected resource needs that drive costs above estimates. External factors, inflation, exchange rate movements, supplier price changes, or regulatory requirements that add unforeseen cost. On the exam, the PM who identifies these risks early and raises them with the sponsor before the budget is exceeded is the PMI correct project manager. The third enabler is monitor budget variations and work with governance to adjust as necessary. Budget monitoring is continuous, not periodic. The primary tool for budget monitoring on the exam is Earned Value Management, EVM. CPI tells you whether you are getting value for money spent. VAC tells you whether the project is forecast to finish within budget. When CPI falls below 1, the project is over budget and the PM must act. When budget variances exceed defined thresholds, the PM works with governance, the Change Control Board, the sponsor, or the PMO to authorize budget adjustments. The PM does not unilaterally reallocate budget between work packages beyond approved limits. On the exam, working with governance is the correct response to significant budget variances, not internal reallocation without authorization. The PMP exam tests specific budget components. Know them precisely. Cost estimates are the baseline, the expected cost of planned work. Above that sits contingency reserve, additional budget set aside for identified risks that may materialize. Contingency reserve is within the project manager's authority to use when planned risks occur. Above contingency sits management reserve, additional budget for unidentified risks, unknown unknowns. Management reserve is outside the project manager's authority. Using it requires sponsor approval. Together, these components make up the total project budget. On the exam, if a known risk occurs, use contingency reserve. If an unexpected event occurs that was not anticipated, request access to management reserve through the appropriate approval process. The fourth enabler is plan and manage resources. Resources on the PMP exam include both human resources, team members, subject matter experts, contractors, and physical resources, equipment, materials, facilities, and technology. Resource planning involves identifying what resources are needed, when they are needed, and in what quantity. The resource management plan documents roles and responsibilities, team development approaches, and how resources will be acquired, managed, and released. Resource management during execution involves monitoring resource utilization, addressing resource conflicts, when the same resource is needed on multiple tasks simultaneously, and ensuring team members have the support and environment they need to perform effectively. On the exam, resource conflicts are resolved through negotiation and replanning, not by simply assigning the resource to the highest priority task without discussion. The fifth enabler is manage and coordinate internal and external resources. Most projects use a mix of internal team members and external contractors, vendors, or consultants, and the exam tests how the PM manages both. Internal resources are managed through the organization's HR processes. External resources are managed through contracts, and contract management is a separate but related discipline on the exam. The PM must ensure that external resources deliver what was contracted, within the agreed timeline and budget, while maintaining a productive working relationship. The key exam principle for external resources: the PM manages the contract and the relationship, but does not manage external team members the same way as internal ones. Contractual obligations and procurement processes govern how issues with external resources are resolved. In agile environments, budget and resource management work differently, and the exam tests this. Agile projects often use a fixed team, variable scope model. The team size and cost are fixed. What varies is how much scope is delivered within the budget. This is the opposite of predictive projects where scope is fixed and cost may vary. Velocity, the amount of work a team completes per sprint, is the primary resource management metric in Agile. If velocity is lower than planned, the PM adjusts scope or sprint planning, not by adding resources mid-sprint, which disrupts team rhythm. On the exam, Agile budget questions test whether you understand that in Agile, the team is the primary resource constraint, and scope flexibility is the primary budget management tool. 3 traps on Task 5 questions. Trap 1. Confusing contingency reserve and management reserve. Contingency is for known risks. The PM can use it. Management reserve is for unknown risks. The PM must get approval. The exam tests this distinction directly. Trap 2. Changing the budget without going through governance. Any budget change beyond defined thresholds requires change control approval. The PM does not unilaterally adjust the project budget even when they believe it is necessary. Trap 3. Adding resources to fix a schedule problem. Adding resources has cost implications and does not always accelerate delivery, especially in Agile environments. The exam tests whether you analyze the impact before acting, not whether you act quickly. Let's recap Task 5. Plan and manage budget and resources. Enabler 1. Estimate. Use analogous, expert judgment, bottom-up, or parametric techniques with lessons learned as input. Enabler 2. Anticipate challenges. Identify budget risks early before they become variances. Enabler 3. Monitor variations. Use EVM. Work with governance for significant changes. Enabler 4. Plan resources. Human and physical. Roles, responsibilities, and conflict resolution. Enabler 5. Coordinate internal and external. Contracts govern external resources. Relationships govern both. Core principle. The PM monitors and escalates. They do not unilaterally change budgets or add resources without authorization. Let's test your understanding. Question. A project manager notices that the project's CPI has dropped to 0.82 over the past 3 reporting periods. The project has consumed 60% of its budget, but completed only 49% of the planned work. The project manager has contingency reserve remaining. What should the project manager do first? Option A. Use the contingency reserve immediately to cover the budget shortfall. Option B. Request access to the management reserve from the project sponsor. Option C. Analyze the root cause of the cost variance, forecast the final cost using EAC, and present the situation and options to the sponsor. Option D. Reduce the project scope to bring the budget back on track without informing the sponsor. The correct answer is C. CPI of 0.82 means the project is significantly over budget. For every dollar spent, only 82 cents of value is delivered. The PMI response is to investigate root cause first, then forecast the final cost using EAC, and then present the situation transparently to the sponsor with options. This follows the proactive, process-driven, transparent PMI mindset. Why not A? Using contingency reserve addresses the symptom, the shortfall, but not the root cause. Contingency reserve is for identified risks that materialize, not for covering ongoing cost overruns caused by a systemic performance problem. Why not B? Management reserve is for unknown risks. A CPI trend is a known performance problem, not an unknown event. Requesting management reserve is premature before root cause analysis. Why not D? Reducing scope without sponsor authorization violates change control and transparency. C is correct because it investigates, forecasts, and escalates in the right sequence. That is your complete guide to PMP Domain 2 Task 5. Plan and manage budget and resources. Subscribe for more PMP exam prep. Next up, plan and manage schedule. Domain 2 Task 6 explained. See you in the next video.